All right, cheers, everybody. Today we're going to be diving into something that I'm guessing a lot of you at home enjoy as much as we do,
I hope so.
beer. More specifically, the chemistry behind it. We're going to be taking a look at Cocktail Party Chemistries, episode 160, the chemistry of beer from barley to pint. I'm ready to learn what's actually going on in that glass.
Well, I think you'll be surprised to find out that it's more complex than a lot of people realize.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beer isn't just kind of like this happy accident of hops and barley. It's actually a really carefully orchestrated blend of sugars and alcohols, acids, and even things called esters.
Esters.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something I'd find in a lab, not at my local brewery.
Well, I mean, in a way, brewing is sort of an edible chemistry experiment, you know?
Right?
Esters are, are organic compounds that contribute a lot of the fruity or floral notes that you get in beer. For example, isoamyl acetate gives off this banana-like aroma,
Interesting.
and ethyl hexanoate can have kind of an apple-y scent. So next time you're sipping a beer and you get a hint of fruit, you can thank those esters.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So let's kind of walk through how these flavors actually get developed. Where do we even start?
Well, with the humble barley grain, of course.
Okay.
But raw barley won't do the trick. It needs to go through this process called malting.
Oh, malting. I've heard that term before. I'm not exactly sure what it means.
Yeah, so think of it as kind of like waking up the barley's potential. So malting involves smoking the grains, allowing them to germinate, and then carefully drying them to kind of halt the process. And this germination triggers the production of enzymes.
Enzymes. Isn't that like the stuff in our digestive system? What are they doing in beer?
Well, they're the real heroes of the brewing process, I'd say.
Okay.
These enzymes are responsible for breaking down this complex starches in the barley into much simpler sugars that the yeast can then ferment. It's kind of like prepping the food for the main course.
So malting is all about just getting those sugars ready for the yeast to party on.
Exactly, and it's not just a simple soak and dry situation. Brewers have to carefully control the temperature and the humidity during malting to make sure that the right enzymes are being activated and to create the desired flavor profile for the beer.
That's a lot of responsibility for some little grains.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The type of barley that's used and the malting process itself has a huge impact on the final flavor of the beer. It influences everything from, color and sweetness to, body and mouthfeel. That's why different styles of beer call for different types of malted barley.
Okay, so we got our sugars ready to go. What happens next? I know hops come in somewhere, but I always thought they were just for bitterness, right?
Yeah, that's a common misconception. While hops do contribute bitterness, which helps to balance out the sweetness from the malt, they also bring this whole symphony of aromas to the beer.
Oh, okay.
Think of them as kind of like the spice rack of the brewing world.
So kind of like all the complex flavors you get from different spices in a dish.
Precisely. Hops contain compounds called alpha acids, which are responsible for the bitterness, but then they also have these essential oils that contribute this incredible range of aromas from, citrusy and floral to kind of earthy and piney.
Wow, I never knew hops were so versatile.
They are.
So does that mean that brewers can choose specific hops to create, specific flavors that they're going for?
Absolutely. Just like a chef selects different spices to create a certain flavor profile, a brewer will very carefully choose hop varieties based on the style of beer they're making. Some hops like Cascade are known for their citrusy grapefruit notes,
Oh, yeah.
while others like Saaz are prized for this delicate floral aroma.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got our sugars from malting, we got our bitterness and aromas from the hops. Now it's time for the main event, fermentation. What can you tell me about that?
This is what the magic really happens.
Okay.
Yeast, those microscopic powerhouses, are introduced to the mix, and they get to work converting those sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide.
So it's the yeast that's actually creating the alcohol in beer.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that was the hops.
The hops contribute the bitterness and the aroma, but the yeast is responsible for that delightful alcoholic kick, and the bubbly carbonation that we all love.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so walk me through how that works. Yeast eats sugar and poof alcohol.
It's a little bit more complicated than poof, but but yeah, you got the basic idea. During fermentation, the yeast cells consume the sugars from the malted barley, and they convert them into ethanol, which is the type of alcohol found in beer, and carbon dioxide, which creates those lovely bubbles.
And the type of yeast that's used can affect the flavor too, right?
Absolutely. Just like there's different types of barley and hops, there are countless strains of yeast, each with its own unique characteristics.
So that's how we end up with, so many different styles of beer. It's all about choosing the right combination of ingredients and the right yeast.
You got it. That's why you have such a diverse world of beers, from, light and crisp lagers to rich and robust stouts.
Yeah.
Each style is a result of the specific ingredients that are used and the particular yeast strain chosen for fermentation.
Wow, hold on. This is a lot to take in. I'm starting to realize that each beer I drink is like this complex symphony of flavors and aromas,
That's a great way to put it.
all thanks to the choices made by the brewer.
And we haven't even scratched the surface yet. There's so much more to discover about the science behind brewing.
Well, I'm definitely thirsty for more knowledge. Well, I'm definitely thirsty for more knowledge. Before the break, we were talking about how much control brewers have over the flavor of beer, even down to the specific type of yeast. I'm curious to hear what kinds of innovations are happening these days in the world of brewing. What are some of the more adventurous techniques that you've come across?
Well, one area where we're seeing a lot of experimentation is with sour beers.
Oh, okay.
These are beers that utilize specific bacteria and yeast strains to create those tart, acidic flavors that you find in a sour beer.
So we're talking about beers that are intentionally sour, not just some accident gone wrong in the fermentation process.
Exactly. Think of it as a very controlled fermentation process where brewers are actually introducing microorganisms that produce lactic acid, acetic acid,
Oh, wow.
or even wild yeast strains.
So instead of those classic beer yeast that we were talking about before, they're using bacteria and wild yeast to create these sour flavors.
Precisely. It's all about harnessing the power of those microscopic organisms to create entirely new taste profiles.
Hmm.
It's kind of like how scientists are using gut bacteria to try to understand how our microbiome shapes our moods.
Right.
We're just beginning to kind of understand the potential of these microorganisms in food and beverage production.
That's a pretty wild thought that the same type of organisms living in our gut could be making our beer sour.
It's true.
So what are some other ways that brewers are experimenting with flavor?
And another exciting trend is the use of unusual ingredients.
Okay.
Some brewers are going way beyond the traditional hops and barley, experimenting with fruits and spices, herbs, and even wood.
Wood.
Yeah.
What kind of flavor does wood add to a beer?
Well, it's not about adding wood chips directly to the beer. It's more about the aging process.
Okay.
Barrel aging is a technique where beer is stored in wooden barrels that have previously held spirits like whiskey or bourbon or wine.
Okay.
And as it sits in those barrels, the beer actually absorbs flavors and aromas from the wood, creating this very unique and often very intense taste profile.
So the barrels themselves become an ingredient in the beer.
In a way, yes.
Huh. That's pretty fascinating. What kind of flavors are we talking about?
Well, it depends on the type of barrel that's used. You can get, notes of vanilla, oak, caramel, even kind of smoky flavors.
Interesting.
It's a very slow and deliberate process, much like how, malting barley requires that precise timing to activate the right enzymes.
Right.
Barrel aging is all about, patience and letting those flavors develop over time.
So barrel aging is more about adding complexity and depth to the flavor, not just throwing in, a bunch of random ingredients.
Exactly. It's about layering those flavors and creating a more nuanced and interesting drinking experience.
You mentioned unusual ingredients earlier. What are some of the more out there things that brewers are adding to their beers these days?
Well, we're seeing beers infused with, everything from coffee and chocolate to chili peppers and even seaweed.
Seaweed beer?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'd have to try it, just to see what it's like.
I'm sure there's a seaweed beer out there for every palate. It's all about pushing those boundaries of flavor.
This is all making me think about just how much science and creativity goes into brewing, a good beer. It's not just about following a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding the chemistry and the art of fermentation.
You've hit the nail on the head. Brewing really is this delicate balance of science and art. Brewers need to understand the chemical reactions that are taking place during, mashing and boiling and fermentation to create a consistent and high quality product.
Right.
But they also need that creative spark to experiment with new ingredients and techniques and develop those, unique and exciting flavors that keep people coming back for more.
Yeah, it sounds like there's always something new to discover in the world of beer.
Absolutely. Just when you think you've tasted it all, some brewer comes up with a new and an innovative way to kind of push the boundaries of flavor. So
Yeah, well, I have to admit, you've made me much more aware of what's going on in my glass. The next time I have a beer, I'll be thinking about those esters and the careful choice of yeast and hops.
that's what we're here for,
I like it.
to help you appreciate the complexity and the craft behind every sip.
Well, before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, before the break, we were talking about all these creative ingredients and techniques that brewers are using. It really makes you realize how much artistry goes into, making a great beer.
It does. It does. Brewing really is as much an art as it is a science, but ultimately it all comes down to the chemistry.
So what does this all mean for the average beer drinker? Someone like me who enjoys a good brew but doesn't, have a chemistry degree.
Well, I think it adds a whole new level of appreciation for what's in your glass.
Okay.
Every time you take a sip, you're experiencing the culmination of this complex chemical dance from the malting of the barley to the addition of the hops and the magic of fermentation.
It's like you're tasting the brewer's knowledge and creativity in every soup.
Exactly. Understanding even just a little bit about the brewing process and the ingredients that are involved can really enhance your enjoyment of beer.
Yeah.
You start to notice those subtle differences between styles, the nuances of flavor, and the artistry behind each brew.
I know I'm already paying more attention to the flavors and the aromas in my beer after learning about all this stuff.
That's the beauty of knowledge.
Yeah.
It opens up this whole new world of appreciation and enjoyment.
So if there's one thing you want listeners to take away from our deep dive into beer chemistry, what would it be?
I'd say it's this. Don't underestimate the complexity and the scientific artistry behind your favorite brew.
Okay.
Each soup is a testament to this intricate interplay of, molecules and microorganisms and human ingenuity.
Well said. I think we've all gained a newfound respect for the craft of brewing today. So next time you're enjoying a beer, take a moment to appreciate all the science and artistry that went into making that delicious beverage.
Yeah.
Cheers to beer and the amazing chemistry behind it.
Cheers. Tell 'em, tell 1 point.